Can you tell me the story about the woman who saw the Bigfoot up by Half Moon Bay?
Yeah. I've had a couple of reports from that area. This one was from a woman who actually lives in Indiana. And she inherited some property in San Francisco, but she's very afraid of flying. But she needed to get out here to do the paperwork to take over this land. And so she drove out, and she brought a friend with her who wanted to come along for the ride. So they made the trek out to the West Coast, and they had a couple of days to spare because they got here early, so they got a motel room in Half Moon Bay. And then they decided to do some sightseeing. So they headed out, and they ended up all the way down in Gilroy, which is south of here. And then they came back from Gilroy up one of the freeways, and she was very unsure about the exact roads that she'd travel on because she wasn't familiar with this part of the world. She hadn't been here before, and she couldn't exactly remember the names of the streets and where she'd been exactly, but we were able to kind of sleuth out where she had been, and we think that she cut across Highway 84, which is by the Crystal Springs Reservoir up in San Mateo County, and there's a very mountainous area there. It's the coastal mountains south of Half Moon Bay, and there's a couple of little parks there. She said that she saw a sign indicating a park, and so she pulled off the main road and went into this park, and said she drove into what was a nice little valley that had redwood trees and ferns, and there was a little creek coming through the mountains, and she said that she passed a couple of houses at first, and then when she got past the houses and she came to the first major turn in the road, it was a long turn, and it was where the river up ahead of her went under the road, and she said that she looked ahead, and not more than about 60 feet ahead, something like that, maybe 30 yards ahead, she saw a figure standing there, and she said it was turned sideways, and she said it looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it was about 9 feet tall and covered from head to foot in hair. And she said she saw only kind of a side view. She never saw its face directly, and it didn't acknowledge them in the car at all, but it just kind of turned. It was turned towards the creek, and it did a standing broad jump of about 20 or 30 feet across the creek. And she said that it landed on the far side of the creek in the ferns and so forth, and then was gone, just in the blink of an eye. No sooner it had touched down when it virtually disappeared. So she said that she drove up the hill, passed it, came to a sign in the road that announced that Devil's Slide was closed, which is an area up the coast where there's landslides in the winter frequently. She had to turn around and come back down, and so she had to go past the same spot. And she was a pretty gamey lady. She said she spent a lot of time in the woods and with animals, and she wasn't really afraid. So they pulled over near the same spot and stayed there for a little while, and they were in a chance they might see it again, but to no avail. Didn't show up again. But she sent me through successive emails after that various pictures that she would find online and so forth to try and use to give me a better idea what this thing looked like. And she said it was built like a bodybuilder, and it had massive calves and massive biceps and a thin waist, and it just made this huge jump and then blinked out, disappeared virtually.